Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here. And today, in between my Elden Ring sessions and, well, normal life, I have finally managed to get my hands on the Tier 10 Techline American Heavy Cruiser, the Des Moines. Now, the Des Moines is, as the title of this video states, the original HE spammy cruiser. Well, but she also has, like, amazing AP, so the original spammy cruiser, and still is one of the best spammy cruisers in game, all in all. And today we're going to be taking a look at her and how she does in 2022 in World of Warships, and also talking about her in Salem, a ship that I get asked to compare her to quite often for very good reason. If you don't know, the Salem is quite literally a Des Moines at tier 10, but it's a special ship with shorter range radar, so we'll be talking about that ship quite a lot in this video, along of course with the Des Moines. So the Des Moines is the tier 10 American heavy cruiser. She was one of the first ships added into the game. She was in the alpha, I believe, in the first or second iteration of the game, although she's changed a little bit since then, as most ships that are that old have. And she's got quite a lot going for her with, well, she's an American ship, so she has the super heavy AP shells, which are absolutely fantastic. And you'll see me put those to work in the first match you should be watching as part of this video quite well. And yes, on top of having amazing AP, she does have pretty darn good HE as well, mostly due to the fact that she has an absolutely absurd fire rate. Well, actually, by today's standards, you wouldn't really consider the Des Moines fire rate absurd. I mean, again, back when this ship came out, and for a very long time, this was the fastest firing tier 10 cruiser. But of course, today we've got, just off the top of my head, Smolensk, Colbert, Worcester, Minotaur, Neptune, so forth and so on. So many more HE spammy or spammy in general ships, although those ships tend to not have the same caliber of gun as the Des Moines. So let's go ahead and dive right on into the Des Moines. I am referencing the Des Moines stats with my commander module build equipped, which I'll throw up on screen for you right here. It's essentially what I run on my Salem as well. So the armor shouldn't be any surprise to, again, anyone that's played Salem. The Des Moines has a 27mm bow. She has a 30mm upper belt, which was changed, I believe, around, what was it, 9.1, 9.2 with the IFHE rework. So that went from 27 to 30mm, which is a nice pickup for the Des Moines. That means you need a 431mm or above gun to overmatch the mid-upper armor belt of the Des Moines. So, like Republic and above, you no longer only need a 16-inch gun, unlike the bow of the ship, which we will get to talking about that here in a moment. Stern's 27 as well. Stern deck's 27 along with the bow deck. Midsection is 30mm, and the Des Moines does, of course, have the exact same citadel as the Salem, which is high and dry, and any of you that have of course, played battleships at Tier 10 know that the Des Moines is not a very tough cruiser. And again, just about every single battleship that isn't the Bargon now we do also have the Cristoforo Colombo, can overmatch the Des Moines and just go right through its bow. Which, I mean, yep. That's about it. I mean, of course, you know, some lower tier ones you're going to run into, but the vast majority of battleships that you're going to run into in the Des Moines can go straight through your nose. And we'll get into how to avoid that later on. But for its other survivability stats, she has 55,100 hit points and a 7% torpedo damage reduction. Now her guns, which are of course the main feature of the Des Moines, with the reload module on these 203mm guns, 203s, have a 4.8 second reload time. 4.8. Now, again, if you're looking at some of the newer light cruisers, that's not that big of a deal, but for a ship with 203mm guns, a sub 5 second reload base with the module is nuts. And then you have to consider too that Once you start getting adrenaline rush going, this is going to get even lower. Then if you have Halsey like I do, you get Confederate, it gets an even bigger boost to the reload time on the guns. And a Des Moines is not a hard ship to get Confederate in, again, with the reload time on these guns. Now, her maximum dispersion is 132 meters. Her sigma is 2.05. She's not the most accurate cruiser, of course. I mean, you got to pay for that reload time in several places on the ship, and accuracy is certainly one of them, as you can see in the footage behind you. She does get the occasional pretty decent salvo, and I do have the aiming systems mod on here, too, to kind of rein in that dispersion, because it is annoying when you have a broadside DD in front of you and you can't land, you know, more than maybe 4 shells on them at a time. But again, with a 4.8 second reload, not that huge of a deal. Range is 15.8 kilometers, and that is stock. If you want to, you can, of course, put the range mod on the Des Moines. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, though. She does have the spotter, too, if you want to give up radar for some strange reason. Because, as we've talked about before with American ships, and this is very much an American ship, the velocity of her shells aren't that great. Now, her HE shells, 823 meters a second. The velocity is good. The AP shells, 762 meters a second. It's not so good. Add on that, too, that these are very much American shells with the American arcs, so they are very, very floaty. And honestly, past 15 kilometers, unless you're shooting at just battleships, you're not really going to hit much. Even then, with battleships past 15, 16, 17 kilometers, you know, unless they're sitting completely still, you can farm them. But if they're moving the slightest, they're going to be pretty difficult to farm at all. But again, if they are sitting still, holding a corner or something, you really want the range, sure, you can do that, but you're giving up, again, a lot of TPM if you don't take the reload module. But again, it's up to you. You can build your ship however you want to. So speaking of those HE shells, they do a maximum damage of 2,800. They have a 17% chance of causing a fire. 34 millimeters of HE pin without IFHE, so you don't need to take that on the Des Moines. And like we said, 823 meters a second. Now, the AP, again, this is that American super heavy AP with the improved AP pin angles and all that goodness to it. This is some sweet AP, which you will see me put to very good use in this match that you're watching right now. The biggest mistake you can make playing this game at tier 10, well, one of the biggest mistakes you can make playing this game at tier 10 is showing Des Moines your side, especially if you're in, well, in anything. If you're in a DD, you're going to get absolutely obliterated by the HE. If you're in a cruiser or a battleship or a carrier, you're going to get absolutely obliterated by the AP. This thing's AP is absolutely nuts. If you show the ship any amount of side that it can pin, it is probably going to Citadel you. If it doesn't Citadel you, it's going to chunk the ever-living crap out of you. This thing's AP is beautiful. And again, it still has good HE on top of that too, with the fire rate. So, this thing's all about the guns. I mean, it makes sense. The Des Moines class cruiser was the last all-gun cruiser ever constructed. You can see the Salem in real life today alongside the Massachusetts, a museum ship that I very much want to go to, both of them, and one day I'll make my way up there. So, that's its main guns. Absolutely the highlight of the ship, and the main reason you'd want to get the ship. She does have secondary. She has 12 127mm guns, the standard American twin gun secondary mounts. It does have secondaries. Of course, you're not going to have secondary build into the ship because why would you? These are mostly, of course, for AA. Now, speaking of AA, the Des Moines AA actually isn't that impressive by tier 10 standards, and including being an American ship. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's good. It's good. You get 12 of the single-mounted 20mm Oerlikons, and then you get 24 of the dual-mounted 76.2mm guns, and then, of course, you get the 12 127s. Now, when you pop DFAA, if you want to equip DFAA, because you have the choice between DFAA and Hydro, it does actually become quite good, but you will be relying on that DFAA to make it that good. But it is very much an AA cruiser if you run the DFAA module. If you don't run the DFAA module, it's a decent AA cruiser. and one that if you do sail along with another cruiser or something, the CV will have second thoughts about striking you. But again, if you really want to get the most out of the AA, you will have to take DFAA over Hydro. Me, myself, I take Hydro more often than not. It's more useful for not eating torpedoes. Maneuverability is another spot where this cruiser does not do well in. The maximum speed is 34.7 knots, and her returning circle radius is 770 meters, and her rudder shift time is 8.6 seconds. Now, what you're watching on the screen right here, too, I do have the propulsion modification on my Des Moines. So this is with the propulsion mod equipped. Now, you can be really memey, and if you want to, you can take the legendary module for the Des Moines in the last spot, which... just because it's in the last spot and you have to give up main battery mod 3 for it, I'd say no. But if you want to be super memey, you can take the enhanced propulsion plant and have the Zoomy Des Moines, which if you take that along with propulsion mod 1, you're literally doubling your acceleration time. And Zoomy Des Moines is stupid. It's stupid, but it's also very hard to hit because of that. Again, I wouldn't do it, but it's a good meme if you have the module. I think now you have the grind research points for research bureau points for the legendary upgrade, so it's really not worth it in my opinion, especially after that grind. But if you got it before with the combat missions, sure, try it out, do some zoomies with it, but I definitely would stay with main battery mod 3. Concealment, she's actually not terrible in the concealment department. You can get it down with the module and the commander skill down to 10.9 kilometers, which gives you about 5-ish kilometers worth of concealment to do your thing with Des Moines. Alright, so what is Des Moines' thing? Well, if you've been living under a rock, the Des Moines' thing is hiding behind rocks. Des Moines is the poster child of the American cruiser experience. Find island close to cap, get behind island, use your catapult guns to lob HE and AP onto your enemy target. Do that for most of the match. Radar the cap with your 10-kilometer radar. Oh, speaking of radar, I do need to go for the modules. With your 10-kilometer radar, which if you want to build into it, you can take the surveillance radar mod and the mod 2 slot. That gives you 20% time to the radar's runtime. You can also take the consumables skill in your commander, which then increases it by another 10%. So you can get like a minute and change on your radar if you really build into it. And that's one of the strengths of the Des Moines. 10-kilometer American radar, 44-second action time with the build that I have it on right now. Reloads in 114 seconds. You get 4 charges of that with Superintendent. So again, sit on the rock, radar the DDs in cap, use HE to shoot the DDs in cap, and protect your DDs too. You know, again, sinking the enemy's Doritos is one of the best thing you can do to ensure that your team comes out on top. Because after that, you've blinded the enemy team, and now your DDs can go do their thing without worrying about being harassed by the enemy team's DDs. And again, she does get her choice of hydroacoustic search or DFAA, again, depending upon what you want. If you want to be more aware of your surroundings and have a better warning about torpedoes, or also potentially hydro some DDs that are hiding in smoke on top of radaring them. So if you really hate DDs, hydro is the choice for you. And you can take DFAA for being more of a harassment toward the enemy CVs. This will make Des Moines AA quite good, but again, with the way AA works, yeah. And of course, too, after eating some shells, your AA mounts are probably going to be busted. And she does get a heal. She gets a repair party, 330 hit points per second. It runs for 28 seconds, reloads in 76 seconds. Get 4 charges of that. And she gets damage con that is active for 5 seconds, reloads in 57 seconds. So that's what Des Moines is really, really, really good at. Now, at the beginning of this video, you heard me mention the Salem, which is the Des Moines sister ship, and is also in the game as a tier 10 coal ship. Like I said at the start of the video, the Salem's more of the short little T-Rex armed Des Moines, because her radar only goes out to 8.5 kilometers. I think I might have said at the start of the video it was her guns that are shorter range. That's my mistake. It is the surveillance radar. Not really sure how I got those flipped. But anyway, so you have shorter range radar, and then you get the Salem Super Heal that repairs 994 hit points per second. It's active for 20 seconds, and it's just like the Minotaur's heal. You can completely reprint yourself a new Salem in one charge. It repairs something like 40% of the ship's hit points over one charge, which is ridiculous. And it kind of solves some of the issue that the Des Moines has with existing. Now, there's also a bit of a flip up in between her consumables as well. The surveillance radar, like I said, it's shorter range, and you can choose between surveillance and hydro. You can't have both like you can in the Des Moines. And Salem is stuck with the DFA consumable in her second consumable slot. I'm sorry, in her first consumable slot. Well, actually, you can move these around as much as you want now. But her other consumable is DFA, and there's no way you can change that. So, if you're wondering about Salem or Des Moines, the only question I have for you is, what are you using your Des Moines class cruiser for? The Des Moines herself is a better all-around random battles ship and farmer because she has much more, well, I mean, not to say that the Salem's consumables aren't usable, but the Des Moines has a wider variety of consumables to choose from. You can tailor it more to your individual play. And of course, you have that 10-kilometer radar. The Salem is kind of better for clan battles and more competitive game modes because of that super heal. Because if you're in the Des Moines or the Salem and you're camping on an island and a battleship manages to lob some shells over at you and goes through your nose, which it probably will do, and you take big damage, the Des Moines can't really bounce back from that like the Salem can. The Salem can just completely print a new Salem on the spot when the Des Moines can't do that. So for surviving, the Salem's a lot better. Now, the Des Moines is not a bad ship because of that in any stretch of the imagination. It's still a really good cruiser, one that I would recommend you guys get. Both of the ships are free, but if you only want to get one or the other, you know, again, if you just want one ship just to kind of do it all, I would say go ahead and go with the Salem. That way you have the tankiness that you would need for competitive play. But if you have the Des Moines and you don't really plan on doing anything competitive, I don't see any real need to save up and spend your coal on the Salem, since you pretty much have the best parts of the Salem there already with the guns and the radar. And again, a 10-kilometer radar, much more usable radar than Salem's 8.5-kilometer radar. But really, it's up to you. But really, at the end of the day, it's, do you want a much more close-in Des Moines with the Salem, or do you want a much more usable random battles farmer Des Moines? Both of the ships are, again, excellent ships with their guns in their own right. The Salem's just a little bit more intuitive to close-in engagements because of the shorter range radar. You kind of have to play a little bit closer, and both ships suffer from the pretty darn bad turret traverse too. Even with Halsey, with his improved turret traverse skill, grease the gears skill, the Des Moines still has a 28.7 second turret 180 time, which, you know, if you're used to battleships, doesn't sound that bad, but for a cruiser, that's a freaking century. It's normally 30 seconds flat, but, you know, you throw the reload module on there, that gets it up a little bit more. And then, of course, if you take grease the gears, that does get it down a little bit more, but still, in those close-in engagements, having turrets on a cruiser that turn at the speed of battleships turrets doesn't really work out that well, as I'm sure you've probably seen by now from my first match. But anyway, guys, just want to talk about the Des Moines. Finally picked her up, and yeah, you know, it's just what I expected after playing the Salem. It's still that, just that I have a bit better radar and a wider choice of consumables, but again, you still get blapped, especially with all the higher tier 457mm and above battleships you get at tier 10. But certainly if you play the Des Moines close into the islands, as she's always been meant to play, and avoid getting shot, ship does really freaking well. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. When we did 35,000 subs, we just passed 33,700 a few days ago, and I can't thank you guys enough for that. Hope you have a wonderful Wednesday, a wonderful week, and hope to catch you guys in the next one.